Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
We begin in Washington, D.C. President Biden held a last-minute news conference last night after special counsel Robert Hur decided not to bring charges against the president over his handling of classified documents. Hur says Biden would have come across to a jury as a, quote, sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. President Biden had some words about that.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on its feet.
Then the president had this to say about efforts to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza.
Initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in.
The president at that news conference mistakenly referred to the president of Egypt as the leader of Mexico. Bloomberg's Akayla Gardner reports this could add to one of Biden's biggest political liabilities, though he is not the only one.
Interestingly enough, Donald Trump has made similar gaffes. He also referred to the prime minister of Hungary as the leader of Turkey. But polls continue to show that voters are just more concerned about Biden in particular with his age at 81.
And Bloomberg's Akayla Gardner notes former President Trump is still facing charges in 4 criminal cases, including over his own handling of classified documents.
Well, Nathan, the former president could have better news coming from the Supreme Court. The justices appear likely to keep Trump on the Colorado ballot after historic arguments over whether he should be disqualified over his role in the January 6th Capitol riot. And the former president dominated the Nevada caucuses last night, putting him one step closer to clinching the Republican nomination. Bloomberg's Amy Morris has more from Washington.
Donald Trump won Nevada in a landslide, claiming all 26 of Nevada's GOP delegates just after securing a victory in the U.S. Virgin Island caucuses. In Las Vegas, Trump referenced yesterday's Supreme Court hearing on whether he can remain on the ballot in Colorado.
This was a great day. This was a great night. Our Supreme Court hopefully will be doing something in terms of helping our country and preserving democracy. We have to preserve our democracy.
The next major Republican contest is February 24th in South Carolina, Nikki Haley's home state, where she trails Donald Trump in the polls by more than 30 points. A loss there would be a devastating blow to her campaign, even though she says she'll stay in the race through Super Tuesday on March 5th. Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Amy, thank you. We now turn to Russian President Vladimir Putin in his first interview with a Western media figure since the invasion of Ukraine 2 years ago. Putin says Russia has not achieved its objectives yet. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter has the story.
Putin says the goals have to be met, but then offered what he says is the way to stop the fighting in this interview with Tucker Carlson. The message through translation directly to the U.S.
If you really want to stop fighting, you need to stop supplying weapons. It will be over within a few weeks. That's it. And then we can agree on some terms.
The U.S. has rejected the same in the past. The war nears the 2-year mark, and neither side is showing any sign of capitulation. Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Ed, thanks. So we turn to the markets now, and as stocks sit in record territory, one Wall Street firm is issuing caution. Bank of America says the stock market is triggering several sell signals. Strategist Michael Hartnett says the bank's custom bull and bear indicator rose to 6.8. A reading above 8 would suggest the bullish trend has run too far, flashing a contrarian signal to sell. Hartnett was broadly bearish on stocks last year, a call that did not play out.
And Karen, investors today are awaiting annual revisions to monthly inflation data. More on that from Bloomberg's John Tucker. John.
And Nathan, after last year's adjustments cast doubt on the Fed's progress in taming prices, this could increase or decrease confidence that policymakers have in a sustainable return to 2% inflation. Consequently, it may affect the timing of the first rate cut. Richmond Fed President Thomas Barkin speaking to Bloomberg yesterday about inflation reliability. He says you do have to acknowledge how good the inflation data has been the last 7 months.
I mean, last 7 months, core inflation 1.9%. That's right on target. That's terrific, right? And I'm not rooting against inflation, but I'm always, trust but verify. Let's make sure that's really right.
The revisions are out at 8:30 Wall Street time. Well, the next key data point will be the regular inflation print. We get that on Tuesday. John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, John, thanks. You want to take a look at some stocks that are on the move this morning, including Expedia. Those shares are down 14% in early trading. Gross bookings in the fourth quarter missing analyst estimates. And in a move that caught many analysts by surprise, Expedia named Arian Gorin as chief executive, succeeding Peter Kern, who's been in the role since 2020.
We're also watching shares of Pinterest, Karen. They're down more than 11%. Fourth quarter revenue missed analyst estimates at the Pinboard-style search company. The results show a disappointing report from Snap. That company suffered a stock plunge this week after holiday season sales missed projections.
In Europe, Nathan, shares of L'Oreal down 7%. Sales at the French cosmetics group disappointing investors. The owner of Lancôme suffered from a decline in shopping by Chinese travelers.
And back here in the U.S., Karen, new rules will force hedge funds to share more details about their investment strategies. Funds with net assets of at least $500 million will be subject to changes, including reporting separately on each component of a fund and revealing how they're investing in crypto. This is an expansion of the current quarterly filing system for big managers. Regulators say it's a better way to keep tabs on risk in the financial system.
All right, Nathan, thanks. Time now for a look at some of the other stories making news around the world. For that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Amy Morris. Amy, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. A bill that would provide aid for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan is moving forward in the Senate. Lawmakers voted in favor of advancing the foreign aid package after Republicans in that same chamber rejected a broader bill, including those border policy changes. The move means the Senate can begin consideration of the $95 billion package. Former President Donald Trump has all but locked up the GOP nomination for president after dominating in Nevada. The next major Republican contest is February 24th in South Carolina, the home state of Nikki Haley. That's where she served 2 terms as governor, but polls show her trailing Trump by more than 30 points. She does have a bus tour through the state for the next 2 weeks, while Trump has a Get Out the Vote rally planned near Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, later this weekend. Drug company CEOs faced a grilling on Capitol Hill. Senators accused them of ripping off the American people by charging more for some of their most popular drugs in the U.S. compared to what they charge in other countries. Senator Bernie Sanders is chair of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee.
According to a recent poll, 82% of Americans say the cost of prescription drugs is too high, and 73% say that the government is not doing enough to regulate drug prices.
Merck CEO Robert Davis says the industry's charging practices come from, in part, the need to fund the research for new treatments.
Future treatment breakthroughs hinge on what we do now. We must hold on to a U.S. pharmaceutical market that is free, competitive, and predictable.
Big pharma CEOs say systems outside the U.S. might have lower prices, but patients will have to wait longer for medicines that are sometimes never approved. A record 68 million Americans are expected to bet on the Super Bowl this Sunday. David Schwartz, UNLV professor and gambling historian, says it is likely because legal sports betting has exploded in popularity.
It's beyond just something people do. It's beyond an activity. It's also a cultural pastime in a lot of ways. It's a social thing that people do together.
The number of Americans placing bets on the Kansas City Chiefs and San Francisco 49ers is up 35% from last year so far. Schwartz says there will probably be more legal bets than at any other time in history. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris, and this is Bloomberg, Karen.
All right, Amy, thanks. We do bring you news throughout the day right here on Bloomberg Radio, but now you can get the latest news on demand whenever you want it. Just subscribe to Bloomberg News Now to get the latest headlines at the click of a button. Get informed on your schedule. You can listen and subscribe to Bloomberg News Now on the Bloomberg Business app, Bloomberg.com, but also Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashower. John.
Karen, a lot of trade activity in the NBA before yesterday's deadline. Philadelphia 76ers sent Patrick Beverley to Milwaukee for Cameron Payne. The Sixers also acquired guard Buddy Hield from Indiana. Brooklyn sent Spencer Dinwiddie to Toronto. Get back Dennis Schroeder and Thaddeus Young. The Raptors say they will waive Dinwiddie. The Nets also traded Royce O'Neal to Phoenix. Dallas traded Grant Williams to Charlotte and returned the Mavs. Get back P.J. Washington, Seth Curry, and a first-round draft pick. Kelly Olynyk goes from Utah to Toronto. for a first-round pick. Warriors won at Indiana 131-109 for Steph Curry. 42 points. He made 11 three-pointers. He had 29 points by halftime. Cleveland won again, 118-95 at Brooklyn. The Cavs with their second 8-game winning streak of 2024. In L.A., the Lakers unveiled a Kobe Bryant statue, and then they lost to Denver 114-106. Hockey, the Bruins a 4-0 shutout win over Vancouver. The Capitals lost at Florida 4-2. Lamar Jackson, a near-unanimous NFL MVP. The Ravens quarterback got all but one first-place vote. Cleveland's Kevin Stefanski named Coach of the Year. Houston quarterback C.J. Stroud, the Rookie of the Year. The NFL Hall of Fame class includes Julius Peppers, Dwight Freeney, Patrick Willis, Devin Hester, Andre Johnson, Randy Gradishar, and Steve McMichael. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports.
From coast to coast, from New York to San Francisco, Boston to Washington, D.C., nationwide on SiriusXM, the Bloomberg Business app, and Bloomberg.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. President Biden tried to push back hard at the latest questions about his age and mental fitness that came out of a special counsel's report that cleared him of charges over his handling of classified documents. But at a hastily arranged news conference last night, the president may have raised those questions himself with a new gaffe in real time. For more on this and other political stories making news this morning, we are joined by Terry Haynes, the founder of Pangea Policy. Terry, good morning. Of course, the slip-up that is getting all the attention in news outlets across the country and really around the world is the president mixing up Egypt and Mexico in a question about Gaza aid at this news conference. Is the reaction to this overdone?
Well, sure. Good morning. Well, sure it is in some ways. I mean, people will always make whatever political or personal hay that they want out of this. But my view of this is it's a real issue. It's the Justice Department special counsel comes out with a document that says, among other things, that Biden's got cognitive issues, and that's one reason why they're choosing not to prosecute. And then Biden, does the snap news conference hours later and compounds the problem rather than puts it to bed. So, it's a real problem. And what he's done is inadvertently or with intent is made those cognitive issues a cornerstone of the election. And he's also made them a cornerstone of geopolitical risk calculus, I think.
That's a pretty strong statement, a geopolitical risk calculus, that it's raising that. Tell me more about why you think that.
Very simply that one of the things that other nations around the world, our friends, our foes, evaluate in us is our government, how the government works, who's at the top of the government, how they operate, why they operate that way. It's one thing to see, and all governments do this and evaluate this way. I mean, it's one thing to see Biden's performance in news clips. It's one thing to register it from afar. But what you had yesterday was a very different scenario where you had an arm of the United States government, and how this is played everywhere else in the world is, senior official of the Biden's own Justice Department saying what he said about Biden's cognition, and then having Biden come on and demonstrate it at the same time. I think that makes the world a slightly more dangerous place, a slightly more risky place, because what our foes are going to take away from that is that Biden's not up to it and his own government knows it, and that's a problem.
Now, it has to be said, though, Terry, that former President Trump has faced his own questions about his mental fitness. Nikki Haley's tried to hammer him on that when the former president mixed her up with Nancy Pelosi. I mean, what could these questions mean for the presidential race going forward?
Oh, absolutely. I do not mean to suggest at all I'm trying to pile on here with Biden. I really don't. I frankly, and I said in my note to markets, that I don't agree with the way that what the special counsel did, or the way the special counsel did it, for that matter. I think it was absolutely unnecessary. But put that aside. Yeah, both candidates have these issues. As I think you said a little bit earlier, it seems to have embedded a lot more with Biden than it has with Trump. We'll see if Trump's issues, which Haley brings out, continue. But right now the Trump people are having a field day on this politically. I think what it does for the race, frankly, is encourages more people to look for third-party candidates. There are an awful lot of people out there that are prepared to hold their nose and vote for Biden, I think, in a 2 or 3 party race. But in a world where the vast majority of people don't want to see a Trump versus Biden race anyway, it's going to encourage people who may be voting for Biden, and even probably a few that may want to vote for Trump, to look at the third party candidates much more seriously.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.